What's up viewers, I'm North. Today I'm going to be showing you part 2 of a two-part video on how to make a top-down game. So last video I showed you how to make a player controller, where to get assets, and how to make a tile map. So this video is going to be more focused on how to do your animations and how to do your collisions and a couple other things. But yeah, basically you have to go back and watch that part 1 if you haven't. I will still show the code at the end, but obviously a lot of the stuff you would have already had to set up, so go back and watch that. Otherwise, let's get stuck in and pick up where we left off. So first thing we want to do, make sure we click on our player, and then we go to Window, Animation, Animations. Later we'll need to make an animator as well, but for now, just make a first animation. We're going to go create, and I've already created a folder here, so I just called it player animations, and I'm just call this player forward. You can call it what you want, but that's what I'm calling it. And now we want to find the images that we need for our animation. So they are, if you're using this path, they are in here, not there. Yes, there. Sorry. Here. Walk, and then it's just the second one here is front. And now what we want to do is actually drag these in, but first we want to move these onto samples 12. Another thing, one that I've already done, is that I've set all these animations down to 16 pixels per unit. You can just see up there. Alright, so now you just want to drag each of these in order. So just hold that down and move that up there, and then just do that for each of them. So I'm going to do that real quick. Alright, so I just created the animation, and so I'm just going to hit play to, I guess, show you guys how it works. And there you go, it's clearly moving. And now we're going to have to create the other animations for other directions. So backwards direction, so you just saw I went to backwards folder. We're just going to do exactly the same thing as we did here, except instead we're going to use the tiles in this folder instead of the tiles in this folder. Always remember to convert those tiles into 16 pixels per unit, and I'm going to quickly do that, bring you back, and then show you how to make the animators. Now that we created all our major animations, we want to go to our animator up here, and if you created them the way I showed you, they should just appear there. If they don't, you should just be able to drag them in from the file that you put them in. And so we want to create our variables. So I've already created a variable. We're going to want to create our other one. So when I did the coding, I made two variables. So one of them was called movement direction Y, and one of them was called movement direction X. So when you do name them, you want to make sure that they're named correctly. Otherwise this won't work. And there we go. So let's just check this. So we move this to the side here, and we hit play. And when it plays, we move to the left, it goes -1. We move to the right, it goes +1 for the X. And then for the Y, we move up, it goes to 1. We move down, that goes to -1. Cool. Alright, so back in our animator, the first thing we want to do is set the first position. So our first position, we actually don't want to be a player moving position, so we want it to be a player idle position. So we're going to actually click on this one and go set as default layer, and now when it enters, it's going to go to player idle front. Alright, so now that we've created our base state, the next thing we want to do is make a transition to our movement state. So we're going to make a transition to player forward, and we'll just move this down out into the open. And now remembering that when our y direction is equal to -1, it's going to be moving downwards. That's when the player forward animation needs to play. So we want to go into our inspector here and go add the condition, and when movement direction y is less than a very small negative number, it will essentially just trigger this animation. So we want to go has exit time is not true, and go settings, fixed duration, and we don't want a fixed duration, so there we go. So I changed the animator a little bit from when you last saw it. So I went from entry to player idle, and that was all I had, and then it would just go to put a player forward. But now I've added this any state in. So basically, whenever it's on anything and it senses that the movement direction Y is 0.1, it'll change the player backward. If you look at the player side, it's either when it's essentially when movement direction X is not equal to 0, then it will go to player side. We're also going to have to program in an ability for the entire player to just flip on plays so that we don't have to have multiple player side animations. So when we go back and fix up the code, I'll show you how to do that. Alright, so looking at our animations now, we can see that it starts off in our idle front state, and it should be able to move side to side, and as you can see it goes into player state. But then one of the issues is that when we face the left, when we move to the left I should say, the player doesn't face the left, so we're going to have to program that in. And then up, down, and the other thing is that you may notice is that when I can go diagonal, and we haven't really programmed that into the game, so we're going to have to either program a way to deal with it or program a way that it looks neat into the game. So let's get into programming a way of having it idle and then also programming a way of turning. So let's go do that now. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is create our ability to idle. So we're going to actually all we're going to do is for now just move this down here, Control C, move this out into our update, and so now we know when it stopped moving. So we can now go and set that up inside Unity. Alright, so now let's give it the ability to flip. So down here, this code will only run when essentially the user's put in a variable. So all this code here will only run when the user puts in a variable. So let's come up here and just create a new variable. So we're going to go private, and it's just going to be a float, and this is going to be old direction, and it's going to start off by equaling 1. And then we're going to come down here, and essentially we're just going to set it so that old direction is equal to input dot x. Alright, so I've now just coded in this if statement here. So as you can see, basically when the new input x direction is not the same as the old input x direction, and it also isn't equal to 0, it will flip. So I've done this using sprite renderer, which I called upon up here. So you're going to want to copy this one down here, private sprite renderer, and then also I've then called on that class down here. So I've got the sprite renderer there. So now one more issue that we noticed was that it can move diagonally, and we don't really want it to move diagonally. So what we're going to do is essentially when this input x is equal to 1, it is not going to be able to have an input of y. So I'm going to program that in and then bring you back. Here we are. So basically what we got here is if the input.x does not equal 0, then nothing happens and it just continues the code. But if input.x does equal 0, then target.y, basically the program continues and looks at y instead. So now let's try this in Unity and see if it works. Alright, so now if I try and move diagonal, I can only move to the right or to the left, and I still move up and down. So now, as you can see, our animations and our movements are kind of working, except we haven't programmed that idle in, and we will also need to fix up that tree. So let's program that idle in, test that out, and then go fix up that collision collider. Hey, so this is future me. I realized that I, for some reason, didn't hit record when I made this part of the animator, so I've just gone back into the animator here, and as you can see here, this is kind of how to set it up. So it's just kind of the same as the other animators here, but instead you're saying basically when movement direction Y or movement direction X, both of those equal 0, it's going to go to these ones. Alright, so now our game's working for the most part, but we still need to add in our collisions. So come up here to where we created that solid tile map, and we want to add in a composite collider 2D, as well as a tile map collider 2D. And in our tile map collider, all we need to do is hit this by use by composite, and come up here, and we want to actually set this to polygons rather than outline. That'll just make it a little more solid. And then we want to come up to our rigid body, which is added in with our composite, and set this to static. And then we now have to go make our code for this. Alright, so I just jump back in here into our player controller code, and what we want to do here is basically create a method so that down here, when essentially we want to move, we check before moving that we can, that there's not anything in the way. So I'm going to code that in. Alright, so before jumping back into Unity, we want to come up here and also create that solid. So solid is basically just going to be like a layer assigned to that solid tile map that we made. So we'll go public because we want to access it from the inspector, layer mask, and then solid, because that's what we named it earlier. Now we're back in Unity, and so what we want to do here is go to our solid and create a layer. So I've already done it, but you're going to come here and go add layer and just write solid, or for me I'm writing solid, but really it doesn't matter what you call it. And then just set it in your layer up here, and come to your player here and scroll down, and you got solid here, and you want to set it to solid there. Alright, so back in our code for Unity, basically what we want to do is make it clear that this is ended so that this can restart in this if statement. So all we have to do here is basically set moving equal to false. And then down here, what we want to do is actually move these animators into this statement. So basically we only want it to be animated if it's actually moving. So let's jump back down there. Alright, so back in Unity now, I wanted to show you the final product. Just so you know, with the previous clip, I'd made a mistake, and when I tried it out, it just didn't work. So I went back and fixed it there. So I'm just gonna hit play here, and yeah, I mean, it's working as intended. So obviously when you make this game, you want to improve it and add in like the fact that this tree here, like I should be able to walk through this area, but I can't because I've just made it fairly simple. But this is supposed to be a basic tutorial, and if you want more, subscribe. If I get enough subscribers off this video, you know, I probably will end up making other videos. So I think I should probably explain a bit of the code a little bit more for those of you who are pretty new to coding. I'm guessing most of you are, so I'll go do that now. And alright, so up here we're basically just like calling the different Unity packages which are already made and the different packages which are already pre-made so that we can use them. Then we come down here, and here are our variables. So the ones that are public we're setting inside Unity's inspector, which just makes it easier for us. Then down here we're calling the pre-made Unity scripts basically. As you can see, I've also commented, so feel free to copy those comments or just look at them. Update methods, so that repeats frame by frame. Hopefully you already know that, but if you don't, you do now. And then here's our animation. So basically this is whenever the update runs, it should check that what animation it should happens. This should always be 0 because in theory it should be running down here, this method down here, when it is moving, but in the case that for some reason it isn't, it will just deal with it because it is input.y, input.x. But yeah, it should be 0 at all times. Down here, if moving basically, so if it isn't moving, I should say, so if moving false, then it should run a method to receive the user's input, which is just here. So this is receiving the user's input, and then down here, it's basically computing that and determining should it be moving up or should it be moving side to side. So here it's determining which side it should be moving to, which side input X is, and like target position. And then down here, if input X is 0, then it should check Y. So the reason we have this is, again, as I explained, we don't want it to move diagonally. And obviously that comment says that, but we don't want it to move diagonally. Down here, we're basically flipping the player. So when it turns, we want it to look like it's turning. We don't want it to always chase the same direction. So that's basically all this is doing. Then down here, again, animations again, so that when it is moving, it animates. This here is basically checking, is there anything in the way, as I explained in the same video. And then just here we have movement and that. Run this function down here. So this function, I can't pronounce that, but basically it runs over time. So most methods will just run through and that'll be it. This will run over time. So then down here, we have it set so that basically all this is doing here is saying, all right, our transfer form position should get closer to our target position every time, every step. So our step is up here, so it's determined by our movement speed times time. So our classic velocity, time, and distance kind of thing relationship up here. So that is what that's what our step is set to, and float, because, well, we want it to be decimal and not an integer, otherwise it just won't work properly. So yeah, down here we have target position. Basically it's just moving towards our target position. That's what this does. It moves our transform position closer to a target position. And then again, we set our moving to false because it can then start our update method again. Then down here, our blocked, we're basically just checking here is where we're going to move our target position over this circle. So the circle centered at target position, and with a radius of 0.25, and is it over that solid layer which we set previously. So then we just determine that, and yeah, that's basically all our code. It's fairly simple. I tried to stay away from too much coding in this video. Hopefully that helps you understand what is happening if you don't. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and learned something and got to make a basic Unity game. Obviously there's a lot that you can add to this, and if you want to see more, subscribe and leave a like. If this video does do well, or the last video also does well, I'll consider adding part 3 or even a part 4, because obviously there's a lot you can do. You can add in NPCs or enemies, and also obviously improve those collisions and stuff. So consider subscribing, leave a like, and if you do want to see more, subscribe. I can't say it enough. Part 1 will be shown there. If you, for whatever reason, haven't seen part 1 and just watch this video for the sake of it, go watch part 1. And if you want to subscribe, subscribing is there. Subscribe because it would help out heaps. Anyway, thanks for watching, and until next time,